The Season 2 update has arrived in COD Mobile, and naturally with it, we've got all of the new balance changes. So today, we're going to be breaking down the top 10 guns in the game. Big shout out to COD Mobile for sponsoring this video. If you guys haven't already, you can download the game with the link in the description. We're going to go ahead and hop into it. First off, we got a couple honorable mentions. First goes to the M13, which was already a super solid option and received a buff this season that drastically increases its 4-tap consistency, which is really where its biggest drawback was in the past. Given that it's one of the fastest shooting assault rifles in the game right now, this might actually become a solid close to mid-range option. Second honorable mention goes to the Bison, which was once again already very solid and close to off meta. It's actually getting a huge bullet spread accuracy buff, which is going to make it substantially more accurate across that mid to long range area, on top of the fact that it does have 3-tap capability when you're up close. That is if you're hitting upper body shots. We've also got the GKS, which I think realistically is better than a top 10 gun in the game, but just because it's effectively a worse USS in just about every possible way. I can't put it in the top 10 for the time being, but if we ever get a nerf to the USS, it'll definitely make its way in. And we've got the R9, which was previously in our top 10 guns as the only shotgun represented, but just because of how niche the weapon is, didn't feel like we could really justify keeping it in there. And our last honorable mention goes to the Lag 53. This is one that in last season's top 10 guns, I had put right there with the Odin, and maybe got a little bit ahead of myself on that one, as having used it a little bit more and seen them side by side, I've started to see more clearly some of the major downsides that do still exist for the Lag 53, especially the fact that its mobility is way slower than every other assault rifle in the game. Even though it does have much better 2-tap consistency now, it is still going to struggle in a number of different scenarios as a result of that. Moving on, once again, at number 10, we do have the #1 sniper in the game by a pretty substantial margin in the Tundra. Having the same lethal zones as the majority of the other bolt action snipers in the game, on top of having better mobility, way faster ADS speed, and way faster rate of fire, there's not really any reason to use any sniper besides the Tundra. The only reason that it's not higher is because snipers do require some amount of skill in order to use them, especially to use them in respawns, so the average player might not have quite as much use for this gun. If you're playing Search and Destroy, there's really no reason not to use it on a regular basis. Next up at number 9, we've got the MG42. This is one that previously was higher on the list and did get a small nerf this season. It did get a nerf to the VOD skeletal attachment, which is usually one of our recommended attachments, nerfing the hip fire spread from a decrease of 5% all the way down to 20%, which is obviously going to pose a substantial difference. With that being said, with an LMG, you're not going to be doing a ton of hip firing, but with how SMG dominated the meta is right now, at least for the #1 gun, it is a little bit tough to limit your close range engagements, and just because of how strong some of the other options on this list are, I kind of felt the need to drop it down a little bit. Next up at number 8, we have a gun that moved up a spot, switching places with the MG42. This is one that I've seen a ton more in the game, especially after its mythic was reintroduced, with the Type 19 once again being a really solid all-around assault rifle. As far as past comparisons, it's pretty much a strictly better version of the Grau with better 3-tap consistency and more damage over the longer ranges. Obviously, one of the major downsides of the gun being that it's not going to be nearly as good if you don't have that mythic version with the built-in red dot. The Type 19 is still 100% usable even with a base version with a red dot on it, and because of its versatility, it's pretty good in just about every map possible. There's not really a whole lot that you can say that's bad about the gun, it's just not quite as good as the rest of the guns on the list. Quick note that I forgot to add in is that we do have the XM4 once again alongside the Type 19, basically just a better aggressive version of it, and we are supposed to be getting optimizations for the mythic version this season. On top of it having a great iron sight on the Battle Pass version, definitely a solid aggressive alternative. Moving on to number 7, we've got the wombo combo of our aggressive SMGs in COD Mobile with the Fennec and the CX9. As far as the fully automatic options between these two, the Fennec is definitely the more difficult to use, having much higher recoil and also not having as many good blueprints that make it viable. I will say if you have the mythic Fennec, this thing feels like it has absolutely no recoil at all, and for the most part no aim shake, so if you've got that option between the two, that's definitely the one to go with. But if you don't, the CX9 has better irons, lower recoil, and a larger magazine size. The 50-round version is definitely a lot more beginner friendly, or if you're an absolute aggressive psycho and love to absolutely shred people in Search and Destroy, if you throw the 12-round mag on there, it's got insane one-burst consistency and actually moves even faster than a melee. Naturally, with both of these weapons, the major drawback is going to be that it's not viable in the long range at all, and they are going to struggle a little bit more when it comes to mid-range engagement engagements, especially for the Fennec because of its lack of bullet spread accuracy and its high recoil. Moving on to number 6, we got two guns that seem pretty much untouchable whenever it comes to balance changes in the game. The Type 63 and the SKS remain the long-range kings in COD Mobile, and it seems like it's probably going to be that way for a while. Once again, neither of these guns have really seen any major buffs or nerfs since they were introduced into the game. Both can one-tap to the head from anywhere on the map. The SKS being the more passive and consistent long-range option while lacking in mobility, it definitely makes up for it in the fact that it doesn't have any bullet speed. And the Type 63 having a lot more versatility in the way that you can build it out, is able to have substantially better mobility, substantially faster rate of fire as well, with the only major drawback being the fact that it does have bullet speed, which is going to factor in a little bit for your accuracy. We do have one major change in here at the number 5 spot, which is one that I am making largely just based on the feel of the weapons that I've gone against, how they felt when I've been using them in ranked as well. The BP-50 obviously got its major nerf last season, and I didn't think it was going to be as impactful as it seemed, but especially when it comes to the 60 round mag, it definitely has taken a major hit whenever it comes to the consistency of that 4-tap and has struggled a lot more in gunfights in those 1 through 4 spots. Now, one thing I will say is if you rock the 30 round magazine on this, it feels just as good as it did before, but when it comes to a weapon that's as fast firing as the BP-50, only having 30 bullets to work with is not easy. To a degree, I would compare this to the CX9 burst magazine in that it has ridiculously fast time to kill, but it's going to be very punishing when you miss your shots, especially because of how slow the reload time is on that 30 round magazine as well. So whereas with the 12 round burst with the CX9, you have a very fast reload time and also a sleight of hand attachment that gives you an extra 35% reload, you don't really have either of those options for the BP-50, which means that 30 round mag is going to be pretty punishing. With that being said, it still absolutely shreds and is still very consistent across a lot of ranges with the 60 round magazine as well. No question, this is still a phenomenal option. Coming in at number 4, we've got COD Mobile's full auto 2-tap assault rifle in the Odin. This is one I've started to enjoy more and more as I've further mastered the weapon. It is one of the higher skill options of the guns in the top 5 just because it does have a very slow rate of fire, which means it's very punishing when you miss your shots, and it's also very punishing if you're consistently landing lower body shots, as you're going to be 3-shotting as compared to the 2-tap. The time to kill is going to get you gunned the majority of the time unless you're pre-firing out the wazoo. Also, unlike some of the higher options on the list, the Odin does require the mythic in order to be at its maximum utility. Having that built-in red dot is a huge bonus, and there's not a ton of blueprints that give you good irons. It doesn't have the ugliest base irons in the world, so 100% still usable, but the mythic never hurts. Coming in at number 3, we've got the HVK. Once again, don't think this one's going anywhere anytime soon, and we're getting what looks to be a really good battle pass blueprint for it in the upcoming season, which I think is going to have unique irons. It's got a very strong headshot multiplier that makes it capable of 2-tapping in the close range, along with solid upper body multipliers that give it a semi-consistent 3-tap. The one big downside of it being the fact that you only have 28 bullets in it. Fortunately, it doesn't fire quite as fast as the BP-50. You definitely still need to be fairly conservative with your ammo usage, and like some of the other options on this list, you do need to be aiming for the upper body in order to maximize its utility. Coming in at number 2, we once again have the DRH. Doesn't seem like this one's going anywhere anytime soon, as it remains a super solid all-around option in the game with great base irons, very good consistency across a lot of different ranges, very good multipliers, and it's not too punishing when you're landing lower body shots unless you're hitting all leg shots. It's pretty much a guaranteed 3-tap in those first couple ranges. And to nobody's surprise, since the USS was not nerfed once again this season, it remains the number 1 gun in the game, and the number 1 gun in the game by far. Guaranteed 3-tap in the first damage phase, very consistent 3-tap in the second damage phase as well. The ability to 2-tap to the head in both, a base version with very usable irons. The ability to 4-tap cross map. It's just kind of hard to believe that this thing is an SMG, and if you don't see this at least 20 times a day in ranked, I envy you. That's gonna wrap things up for our top 10 guns in the game. Hope you guys enjoyed. If you did, drop a like down below, subscribe if you haven't already, and we'll catch you guys in the next one.